This week, I introduced legislation to prohibit the net increase of federally owned land in the Virgin Islands National Park Service on St. John. The Virgin Islands National Park boundary encompasses nearly 2/3 of the island of St. John. Within the park boundary, there is both federally owned and privately owned land. There is a finite amount of land for the residents of St. John, who are already confronting housing shortages. This legislation takes the necessary steps to prevent an increase of land owned by the park. This legislation prevents any net increase of federally owned land on that island. Individuals and entities would still be able to donate or exchange land with the park. If the Virgin Islands National Park acquires any land, an equal acreage of land must be conveyed out of the federal ownership. The legislation includes stringent guidelines to ensure the park does not utilize bureaucratic processes to cause excessive delays. When the park elects to sell federal land to avoid an increase in net acreage, it must offer the land for sale within a year at a fair market value. 6 months after the land is first offered for sale, if it is not under contract, the price is reduced by 10% each month. This legislation addresses the concerns I hear consistently from Virgin Islanders about an ever-expanding presence of the park on St. John. The park has a responsibility as stewards and also as a partner of the Virgin Islands. That has not always been the case. Unfortunately, often the park seems to be solely engaged in protecting land, not the people who were the original inhabitants of that land, or the people brought over as enslaved people, fought for freedom, and through sweat and toil were able to obtain land on that island. Albeit sometimes well-intentioned, what they have done is effectively crowded out Native people in furtherance of neo-colonial bourgeois wildlife ideals, acting under the assumption that the local people, interestingly people of color, cannot care for the land themselves. As we look at the history and the future of the Virgin Islands National Park, our decisions must be intentional to support St. John, the entire Virgin Islands, which includes its land, its people, its history, its culture, and our future. I look forward to working with my colleagues to advance this legislation. I yield back.